Good evening. This is Karen with Karen's Cards and More, and welcome to another Monday night Stamp and Share. And this month we are going to be, this is the first one for August, and so for the month of August we're going to be featuring the hand-penned Petals stamp set and the coordinating die set that goes with that. So that's all of our projects for the month of August are going to feature this. So let's get right into it. Tonight I wanted to start with something that focused mostly on stamping rather than the die cutting. Next week we'll focus on die cutting. But I wanted to do something that would be good for beginners and they wouldn't feel like they wouldn't be too scared. So if you're a beginner at card making, and I've seen a lot of posts of people just starting out and wanting to know, how to get started, what supplies. This is a really good set because it's really forgiving, and you'll see when we do the stamping that it's just a great set for a beginner. So tonight's card is not difficult at all. You can follow along with me, or you can watch the replay here or on YouTube. I'll be posting it there as well. And it's just a good card to get initiated with. It's also good for advanced card makers if you need something quick and simple. So let's just get right into what we're going to use. I already mentioned the stamp set that we're going to be using. You're also going to need a piece of basic white that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. And I've got something on that, so I am going to just grab, I keep, another secret that you might do, I guess it's not a secret, but I keep a lot of these basic white pieces already ready. So whenever I need to make a quick card, I can use the basic white card base. You can do it in other colors as well. It's cut, it's scored, it's ready to go. So you might think about that, keeping in your stash some standard card bases ready to go. So then the DSP that we're going to use, the Designer Series paper that we're going to use, is 5 1/4 by 4, and that's going to be for this front piece. We're also going to use a piece that's a strip that's 1/2 inch by 5.5, and it's just going to go on the inside to dress up the inside a little bit. I didn't want to do anything too difficult, trying to keep it simple. So dresses up the inside, you still have plenty of room to write your message. And then you're going to need a piece of polished pink, and this is 2 3/4 by 4. And then we're just going to do a narrow border with the basic white, and this is going to be 2 5/8 by 3 7/8. That'll give us the narrow border. And then we're also going to use some of the basic rhinestones. We're going to use a few of those on the front. So let's talk about the inks that we're going to use. Instead of using the black memento for my greeting and for the outline, I wanted something that wouldn't be as harsh, just to tone down a little bit because these are subtle colors. So we're going to be using basic gray for that. And then for all of our flowers and leaves, we're going to do second generation stamping, which means we're going to stamp off once on a piece of scrap paper, then we're going to stamp on our project to give it a lighter look. So we're going to lighten up all of our colors. We just want a real soft look. So we're going to be using polished pink, fresh freesia, and soft succulent, which are all new in colors this year. So those are the three that we're going to use to color in our flowers and our leaves. So just 4 ink pads tonight. That's all we're going to need. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with our decorative panel. So I'm going to bring in our little basic white piece, and for this I'm going to use the Stamparatus. It's a bigger image, and I like to use that. For me, it's easier to use the Stamparatus for these images than to use the big size F block. So I'm just going to turn this around, and I'm just going to put this on here. And what's nice about these grid, now this is an additional mat. The one that comes with it is just a plain foam mat like this. But I purchased the additional accessory and I love it. To me, it's a must-have because of the grid lines, and it's also the foam, so it's great with the polymer. So I'm just going to figure out how I want my flower to be on my card front. So you can play with this, you can turn it and just figure out how you want it to appear, leaving room at the top for your thanks. And I think I like it just about there. Okay, so then I'm just going to close the lid and just press down on that, and that will get my stamp on my lid. Okay, so let's bring in our basic gray, and I'm just going to tap on my stamp. And then another nice thing, I've said this before about the Stamparatus, is if you don't get the image you want the first time, you can always, as long as you don't take it off, you can always re-stamp it. So then we're just going to close the lid. The easiest stamping you'll ever do is with the Stamparatus. I'm just going to rub over that a little bit and pull it up, and I like my image just the way it is. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to pull this out of here, and while we still have the basic gray, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my other foam mat, and I'm going to bring in the thanks. Feel free to leave comments. I love to read your comments as I'm stamping. So if you're watching tonight and you want to leave a comment, I'd be glad to see what you have to say. So we're just going to figure out where we want our thanks, and we're going to try to get it straight on here. And I think right about there. And I'm just going to press it down. I'm not applying a whole lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure. And I just hold it there for a minute to get a good image. And there we have our basic panel done. So now it's left to color in. Now you could come in with your Stampin' Blends and do all the coloring. And that would be a beautiful piece of artwork that you had. But because beginners can be intimidated by coloring, I decided just to let the stamp set. And that's why I say this is such a good set for beginners, is because the stamp set will do the work for you. I'm gonna bring in a piece of, I'm trying to find a scrap that doesn't look really bad. I've used them over and over and over, and they've got images all over them. Okay, so we're gonna get started, and we're going to do our larger flowers first, and those are in polished pink. So I'm just going to bring in my polished pink, and I'm going to start with this big flower, which is this image here. And I'm just going to ink up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp off because I just want a light dose of color. I'm trying to figure out how to line it up. It's not going to match perfectly, and that's why I say it's really forgiving for beginner stampers, because it won't line up perfectly. And so it's just a spot of color, a splash of color. That's what I wanted to do with this. I didn't want something that was bright. You could definitely do it. If you like this look, you could just stamp directly on the piece, but I wanted that soft, subtle look. So now I'm going to come in with the next size. We have one of those, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to ink up, and I've got a little bit of ink on my block, and you always want to pay attention to that. because you want to clean that off. If you don't, you risk getting it on your card that you're working on. So I'm going to stamp off. And so I've got just this, I'm going to have this lighter splash of color, and I'm just going to come in and press down. There. Okay, now let's do the little flower over here. And it's just the same process. I'm just going to get it in the polished pink. I'm going to stamp off. And then I'm going to come in and stamp on the project, figuring out which way to go. Just like that. Okay, we're done with the polished pink. Now, there's one of the stamps that are two flowers together, and that's what we're going to be using for this and for this. And that's this stamp here. And we're going to do that in the fresh freesia. And again, I'm going to ink up. I'm going to stamp off. And I'm going to do that again. I think I took off a little too much color. Okay. So then I'm going to come back in here. And I'm going to line this up. Again, it won't line up perfectly. That's the beauty of this stamp set. And there. And I'm going to do the same thing. Ink up, stamp off. And then I'm going to come in and just give us a splash of color like that. Okay, now we're ready to do our soft succulent. There's two different size leaves. There's the larger ones and then the small ones. So let's start with these two larger ones. Looking for both my leaves. Okay. I'm going to start with this larger one, and again I'm going to stamp off and then stamp on the project, just giving a splash of color. And I'm going to put my paper under that since it's just part of the leaf, so I don't get ink on my foam piece. Just like that. And then I'm going to come in with the little leaf, and I'm just doing the same thing. Stamping off and stamping on the project. Stamping off and stamping on the project. Same process each time. Till I get all the leaves done. We've got 2 more leaves to go. It's kind of almost like a watercolor look or a colored pencil look maybe. Just a little bit, just a splash of color. There we go. So we're done with our stamping, just like that. We've got all of our image colored in and we're ready to move on. That's why I say it's really forgiving for beginner stampers. Because the stamp set does the work. It's not meant to be a perfect fill-in. It's meant to have some white showing, and that just makes it really easy for beginners. So that's why I say this is a great starter set. Okay, so let's bring in our pieces, and we're going to get started putting it together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some stamp and seal on the back of our colored piece that we just worked with. Just going around each side. Now this will be a narrow border, remember. because we'll just have a small border on each side. Just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and put our pink piece on our card front. And this will have a little bit bigger of a border than what our centerpiece had. So we want to keep that in mind. You could definitely put this on if you're new to card making. A good idea would be to use liquid glue because you have more time to straighten it if you don't get it on straight. So that's an idea for you as well. And so I'm just going to come in with this. Try to get it straight. And press down on that. And while we're working with this, I'm going to go ahead and work with the inside of this. And we're just going to take this little strip that I told you about, and we're just going to put a strip of the Stampin' Seal on the back of this. And I cut mine a little big, but that's okay because I can trim it. And you can put it anywhere you want. You can put it higher, you can put it lower, you can put it middle, however you want. But I'm just going to turn this over, and I'm going to bring in my scissors. I have a pair of scissors that I use just for things that are sticky, so that I don't gum up all my scissors. So I'm just going to bring those in, and I'm just going to cut it from the back side and just cut that extra piece off. Just like that. Okay. So that's our inside piece. Then you have plenty of room to write your personal message. So let's turn this back over. And we're going to center this on the front of the card. Now you could, if you wanted to do something different, if you wanted to add different types of matting, sometimes that can make your card look even more elegant than it already does, just by adding extra layers. You could add more matting. You could add some vertical strips underneath this if you wanted to, but we're just going to go like this. So I'm going to put some Stampin' Seal on the back of this. Can't believe we're making a card without dimensionals. I think I use dimensionals on almost everything. And this is one card I'm doing that I don't have dimensionals. And my roller on my Stampin' Seal came off. So I'm just going to pop it back in. If it stops rolling, sometimes this can get off track. So I'm just going to peel this over. Let's just open it up. Yeah, it's completely off the track. So if I can't get this fixed fairly quickly, I'll just bring in another tape runner. Yeah, it's going to take a little work. So I'm just going to set this aside and use my big gun for the rest of it. And we're just going to center this. Press that down, and then we're ready to add our rhinestones. And I'm just going to add 3, and I try to go in a triangular pattern, and I'm not using the real large ones, I'm using the smaller ones. And these are just the basic rhinestones. And so I'm just going to put 3 of these around the card. You could do, if you wanted to add a bow or some ribbon, you could definitely do that as well. And let's go about here. There's no perfect placement of these. It's just what looks good to you. So however many you want, you could always go more. You could have just put some across the top in a line. However you want to do it. Play with it, experiment, do different things on different cards. And then we're just going to fold this. And I'm going to use my bone folder and just give this a good crease across it. And there we have our card. And that easy to have a handmade card to send out to thank someone for something that they've done. Real easy, great card for beginners, quick card for those that have been making cards for a while. Just a special touch. I hope you've enjoyed this card. I hope you will join me again next week. We're going to feature the die set a little more next week. And then keep an eye on the Facebook page and the Facebook group, either one. I will be posting the projects for September by the end of this week. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that. We're going to kind of do a fall theme, a back to school theme. So you definitely want to keep looking for that so that you can get your supplies ordered so that you can craft with me next month, September. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we will craft together again on next Monday.